Welcome to Pathways, Becoming Trauma Responsive, where we explore trauma through a compassionate lens, discover how these experiences affect each of us differently, and dive deeper into what it really means to become more trauma-informed. I'm your host, Dr. Elizabeth Meeker, Senior Director of the New York State Trauma Informed Network and Resource Center, funded by the New York State Office of Mental Health. The network advances the collective understanding of trauma, wellness and healing, and trauma-informed practices in action. This podcast is produced by CCSI. The views, opinions, and content expressed in this podcast do not necessarily reflect the views, opinions, or policies of the New York State Office of Mental Health or CCSI. I am so excited to have the two of you and welcoming you to Pathways today, Angela and Josh. To me, this is a really exciting conversation because you both have personal connection through your roles to the Trauma Informed Network and Resource Center, but you also have a pre-existing relationship through your former workplace where, a supervisory relationship that we're going to hear about today too. So I'm excited about this conversation we're going to have together. So I'm going to turn it over to the two of you to first introduce yourself to our audience.
Thank you, Elizabeth. My name is Angela Colòn-Rentas, and I am a mother of two, a mirror writer, artist, and a youth peer specialist advocate, now working for BIPOC Peak as a, senior young adult peer service navigator. Sorry, it's new. I was consulting with them, and I'm just now getting on board with that title.
I have a super long title too, so it's
So now I'll be actually.
We're good at creating long titles.
We'll change it to an acronym at some point.
Yeah.
A good idea. And then your ex, then we could actually say the whole thing. But yeah, now I'm actually proud because I am going to be training the new generation of youth peer advocates here in Monroe County in Western New York. So I'm very excited about that and leading them to them getting credentialed. As we always wanted.
Amazing. That's great. And Josh, how about you introduce yourself?
My name is Josh Higgins. I am the Community Provider Engagement Specialist with the Trauma Informed Network and Resource Center. I'm also I'm a rapper. I'm a poet. I produce music. And I'm a dad of two awesome kids, a son and a daughter. And yeah, just very happy to be here, excited to be talking about, Angela and I have been through a lot together, so it's exciting to kind of like talk about our journey and all the trials and tribulations,
Great. Well, thank you so much. And we're kind of starting where we are today in your roles, but we're kind of take a little trip in time and go backwards and learn about kind of when you first started to work together and, thinking about that also from a trauma-informed lens and maybe what you knew then and maybe what you know now and kind of how that shaped your relationship, the way you work together. And so maybe you could just share a little bit about how the two of you first kind of met and what was the nature of kind of your working relationship at that time.
Do you want to talk about what was your first initial?
So
when you met me?
I was employed as a supervisor for community-based services, which was essentially people that were like professional peers. There were youth family peers and there were family peers. I helped people just kind of learn the role, get onboarded, credentialed, and all of that, and kind of everything else, and just like real-time support. It's a difficult role going out into people's homes, being in the community, and just helping to sort of navigate these roles because they're kind of like emerging and new. And I was very new at it as well. So I think Angela was maybe the first of like 3 people I hired in the role, or I took part in onboarding. So it was like
one of the first 3.
Yeah, Angela's been with me like through my whole journey here in Rochester. I moved here about like 12 years ago. I was employed in another role for a few years, and then in my role at Compeer, that's how I met Angela. Like, and we realized quickly that we had a lot of things in common, and yeah, it was great. It was great. It started out like amazing. It was like full steam ahead, you know?
Yes. I remember when I first met you, it was,
No.
well, not talking about the actual like interview and stuff like that, because obviously it's an interview, so you have to be, you know, like very, very professional. But like once I sat in your office, I felt still a little nervous, but in some sense, the way you just disclosed, or just like, I guess your demeanor in some sense. And then we started talking about art, your music.
Yeah.
And then I think that's how we bonded in some sense, over our creativity and
For sure.
in our art. And that gave us like a good first step, in our what's it, relationship. And
Yeah, it was a good foundation. I feel like
Yeah.
there's a lot of artists in these roles. For some
Yeah.
reason, it's like that sort of creative side comes out in this work, you know?
Yeah.
it's finding that mutuality when it comes
Yeah.
down to being a peer. And I felt that you actually were trying to be a peer. And I still have my reservations. I'm not gonna deny, you know, I had my reservations for a while. But it wasn't until, I guess, like farther ahead, once we, over a year and all these tribulations, and we stood firm on our beliefs. And I guess your peer side came out more. And we clicked even more.
So yeah, when you introduced each of yourselves, the thing that really stood out to me is that, like, after kind of parent, it was like artist, you know. So you had these shared kind of interests and identities, and but also hearing that, you know, Josh, you were new kind of to a supervisory role, and it sounds like Angela, you were new to your role, and so I'm curious, just, you know, now what you know about trauma-informed practices, kind of where were some of the things that maybe went well? It sounds like connecting and being, you know, kind of getting to know each other was a helpful starting place. You know, but I'm imagining too, there might have been some challenges.
Yeah, I think I'm kind of like, I think I quickly knew sort of, I was able to quickly, as like a former from, I'm like a peer from like way back when. And I think coming back into the work, I had an idea that I wanted to be a little bit, I feel like, and we were talking about this like before we jumped on, is like the idea that in these peer roles, they're really sort of cutting edge in that the common prevailing approach has really been to separate your personal self, like your lived experience from your work. And I think like what I really understood from the start was like, oh, this is an opportunity to sort of pull your own experience and being sort of like I'm a kind of a subversive person by nature. So I realized that this was like a unique and and um, it was a way to be creative in our approach and how we help kids to heal and help like families to heal. It was like, okay, like we can do something different here. So yeah, that was kind of like the approach that I kind of came into to the work. I kind of had like I had a like a little bit of an agenda, but it was like I'm trying to navigate like all of that in the context of it's a Medicaid service, and there's a there's there's a whole bureaucracy that exists like statewide from like a systems level that was like, really daunting. So
Right. So kind of you had the role, and it tapped in and allowed you to kind of show up as your creative self. And at the same time, you're working within a system that has requirements and things that you can bill for, and you have to also navigate those realities at the same time.
and it's a lot of pressure because I think because the services were relatively new
Mm-hmm.
to the organization, there was a lot of pressure behind that because there's that like sustainability factor,
Yeah.
and there is like even though it's like not for profit work, there's a bottom line, you know.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so there was that like pressure side as well.
Yeah. So I'm curious, Angela, what was that like for you walking into that space and, kind of imagining you were excited to walk into this new role and kind of how did that play out for you?
When I first started working as a peer,
Mm-hmm.
I was super excited. And I think I mentioned it when I had a speech at the God Dreams Awards, or God Dreams in
Mm-hmm.
2018. Um, I was super excited just because it was an opportunity to share and to use my lived experience, in which I went through like a deep, deep pit for a long time. And behind there was, in my head, a voice saying like, you have to go through this because this is gonna get you where you're supposed to be in the future,
Mm-hmm.
because everything happens for a reason. So yeah, I was super excited. I having the opportunity to use my lived experience to help youth in crisis. In this sense, there's certain the organization I was working for is mental health, so it actually opened up the doors to a different lens in
Mm-hmm.
me as a person, as my background and culture. Mental health is definitely not something I would have chosen if it wasn't because of the peer role,
Mm-hmm.
having to use my lived experience. So knowing that, well, at that moment, it wasn't very clear, but I knew that that lived experience was clear. So I still went into mental health, and I went open-minded because I know that, I can't just live off what I am told, because I've always had that perspective that you have to actually give opportunity to different things rather than to be or to have a narrow vision
Mm-hmm.
to one particular thing. So I learned a lot. And one of the things that you told me in the beginning is like you gave me that free reign to actually research and build myself and train and just be a peer, like without having the high expectations of me having to be a complete professional and have that attire and all that, in which it wasn't me. It was not me.
Mhm.
Because if anybody knows me, they know that I love my t-shirts. I love my t-shirts, but it was wonderful. And then meeting youth, finally working with them, just knowing that even though I was still young, they respected me in some sense because of that mutuality, because they
Mm-hmm.
knew that I wasn't there to judge them. I wasn't there to fix them. I was there for support, and use my lived experience in that manner. And it was wonderful for quite a while.
Uh-huh. So it sounds like, when you started, you felt like that you got the support from Josh to show up as your true, authentic self. And that allowed you to do the same for the youth that you were working with. The way you ended that made me think that maybe things changed over time, not necessarily about that, but in terms of the work you were doing and your experience of the work.
It totally did. Like
Yeah.
towards the end, it was more of pressure, pressure and non-accountability.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that I think that the idea that these services are emerging as
Mm-hmm.
professional peers, I feel like we're like very much early in the journey, right? There's like this idea that there's a struggle for professional peers. There's
Mm-hmm.
a common conversation around really making sure that people understand that these like positions are like crucial, they're pivotal, they're life-changing. They're really like the I don't know what you'd say, like the linchpin to like connecting all of what a person is going through in a way
Mm-hmm.
that makes sense to a person going through some sort of struggle. So it's like the but that also, the other side of that coin is that there's a professional struggle that goes into it as well.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're a professional peer with lived experience, you might be like
Mm-hmm.
actively trying to manage your own personal trauma, your own personal life
Mm-hmm.
in the context of trying to serve people.
Right.
When you add on maybe like some like organizational pressure, especially if an organization is like really trying to provide these services that when they haven't in the past and there's no historical reference, it becomes like it becomes hard to sort of maintain the perspective of being trauma informed,
Right.
because there's a pressure to actually create business
Mm-hmm.
decidedly not trauma informed. You know, it's like it just is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to have a bottom line for a business
Mm-hmm.
that be trauma informed. I think we're kind of running into that in all sorts of different ways in our society, but it was difficult when there wasn't enough business.
Okay.
When there wasn't enough to do, it became very easy for people to be worried about their own job and their own sustainability, and their own employment. And is this job, am I going to continue to have this job?
Right.
Can I do it? Can I work with all the pressure and be worried that my job might not be like, it might not be there at some point.
Mm-hmm.
I would
It
say
was
that
tough.
transparency played a big role when it came down to that, that time. I guess when you were transparent with me and were you openly said the billing stuff, because I had no idea what goes behind,
Yeah.
in this
Right.
area. I'm just a service provider, which I didn't even clearly know I was a service provider until a while afterwards. So just having that clear role is a big point when it comes down to peer services, clarifying your role. But when you opened up and you said, hey, this is, we need to make this amount and this amount in order to actually sustain, like it
Went
gave
full transparency.
Yeah.
and then I finally understood, you know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
I believe that when it comes down to being trauma informed, like you shouldn't be trying to gaslight anybody, try to keep things away from them, or try to make them believe that, it's all on you and you're not doing things right because you're not making the money that you're supposed to, that you want. If you're clear about it, then we all have a responsibility. We are all aware, and then we all know our roles in which to
Right.
play and how much effort to put. But if you're not being transparent and you're only seeing, I guess, the bad stuff that a person does or an employee do, then in that sense, I don't believe you're being trauma informed. Like it's making them have this burden that it's unnecessarily have to be carried, rather than just being transparent and like, let's work together.
Yeah.
You know what we're supposed to do, what is really going on. If we don't push this, we're gonna sink or something.
Yeah.
And we all work harder.
Yeah, yeah. I feel like transparency, like, is it is like a tenet of being trauma informed.
Of course. Yeah.
I think at a certain point, I felt strongly that because we were not hitting sort of like the like the threshold, like financial sustainability,
Right.
I just went full transparency because I really wanted to have people that were doing the work at the organization have a sense of like ownership. We all know what we have to do from top to bottom. It's not just about a supervisor or the higher ups at an organization hoarding all of the knowledge. I've run into that in a lot of work, and I feel like in a lot of ways it's been harmful because I want to know what the whole game is as a person. And I feel like there's a lot of things that go into that. And when information is siloed, it just feels it just doesn't always feel right. And it feels almost harmful to not really know the full story about a particular part of a business that you are working for.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, I'm so glad you shared that example because I think, sometimes unintentionally, there can be decisions made by leadership that they're protecting people by not sharing that information, like, right, that they have to carry that burden. And Angela, I think you shared so clearly, like, as soon as you had awareness of it, it painted the picture of the full story, and then you knew what your role was to support that mission because you're invested in making it successful. Like, you want this to succeed. But without that information, then you're going to maybe draw all different sorts of conclusions, like I'm not working hard enough, or, something's not going right or whatever. But once you knew, like, oh, this is where we're at, and this is what I can do to help, and that you were invested.
This is how things work.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I didn't clearly understand, like, okay, so I meet with, for a certain amount of time, then some billing comes back and all that stuff. So once I understood,
Yeah.
I believe I had the best numbers for a long while.
Oh, yeah.
When it came, like, I started just boom, boom, boom. Even though I was already meeting with families, it was just like more because I wanted to do more for the organization, because I felt like it was my responsibility as a member. And I enjoyed what I love to do. Meeting with families and my youth, and I call them my youth, my participants, former participants. It was always exciting. I love that.
Yeah, and I think that people, when you have the knowledge, I feel like there is this idea that and I also noticed that there was like so much turnover. And part of the reason why I continue to do the work was that I started to build a knowledge base. And it just felt really important in order to create the peer as a true cornerstone of mental health, having the full knowledge of like how the system works is just so crucial. It's so important because people come into the work, they're not getting what they need, and they're exiting the work. And we need peers. In mental health, in community services. It's just like there are few professional roles I believe in more than the professional peers. Like, I think it's so crucial.
Yeah.
So it was like,
Josh.
It's just I could talk about it all day, and it's just so important to address those systemic barriers that exist however we can, even if it's not appropriate. The role of a peer should be, you are speaking for the community, you're speaking for people that don't have a voice sometimes, you're doing that advocacy work. And I feel at the time I felt like as a supervisor, it was my obligation to do that. However I could, Yeah.
Yes. And that's why we are sitting here today, a few years later after we, because I believed in it so much, and I felt it, and I still feel it from you, like your passion towards it, and just believing in the peer services. And you taught me so much as a supervisor over what, 5, 7 years, I'm not even sure. But his coaching, when it came to not knowing certain things and explaining terminology, and having the patience to understand that I am a youth peer advocate. There are things that I do not understand or know yet, Have the time, you take the time, the patience to actually explain to me. It doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to catch it in the first time, but if a youth is open to learning, then you should be open to teach them, to mold them, to give them the resources and understanding. Because in my role, I left as a lead peer, but for a long time, it was like, if I would have known more information from the very beginning, it could have been like way before. We could have but having that, I guess what you were saying, that not imparting knowledge to certain levels. Same. But now that I know so much, like, this is how I am able to actually move around, because you didn't shy away from giving me all this information, that even though at that time it wasn't for me to know, or, you know, for you to tell me.
Yeah.
All this background information about, you know, admin stuff.
Mhm.
I grew so much throughout our supervision, just because you took the time to do that and to explain, and because I wanted to learn, you know, and you know, I will ask you, what does that word mean? Because he used big words,
Yeah.
like learning. And
Uh-huh.
we kind of struggled with that through the notes, because documentation wasn't so great when it came down to terminology. But once he got the sense that, you know, just let's keep it plain, and I'm okay with learning, and you're okay with me not being so wordy, because you are, we've got even along even better.
I was a little tough on progress notes and things
Uh-huh.
like that. I was a bit overbearing, maybe.
You gotta know what he's talking about. What am I supposed to fix? I think it's perfect.
I was overbearing at best, somewhat culturally incompetent
Uh-huh.
at its worst. But I think we still have a relationship today because we sort of we communicated in a way where we developed mutual understanding.
Mm-hmm.
Just a supervisor telling somebody what to do. We developed a relationship where we always strive to have mutual understanding.
Mm-hmm.
Um, even in the context of like, hey, like I need you to step up here,
Mm-hmm.
done in a way where we had a relationship that was like really based on that, and we understood what our goals were in the
Right.
long.
Yeah.
So,
And what I was hearing from Angela is that she had that felt sense that you were invested in her growth. Like you cared about her as a person and wanted her to grow. And so, you know, I'm hearing from you, Josh, maybe sometimes you did, in retrospect, you might have done it a little bit differently, but it came from that place, you know. And I think language is a great example, right? Like systems have created a very jargon full language that is very hard to understand and navigate, right? And you know, I think Angela, you're just bringing attention to it. There's ways to say the same thing in plain language, but also we have to take the time to help people be able to understand what those are so they can translate it into a way that makes sense, like, right? But so we create some of our own challenges in that way.
Yeah, and I felt safe enough to say, or
Yeah.
to actually express that I don't understand something.
Right.
And you actually explained it without making me feel like I was, you know, not to the level that I think I'm supposed to be.
Right.
Or I feel, or I'm, you know, being felt that I'm supposed to be at a certain level,
I appreciate
you
that.
know.
Yeah, yeah. And so like really, you know, the importance of having that safe, respectful space where it's okay to ask any question and it's not going to come with any judgment like why don't you know that? It's just like, yeah, come with questions. That's what this space is here for. You know, yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I think it was very
Like bring a question. I think we did that for a few weeks.
oh yeah, we did. It was like, just come with like questions, like
Yeah.
5 questions or something. It was like,
Uh-huh.
um, I think that there was that, to go back on that like transparency perspective, I really felt like when all was like said and done, years after we had our like professional relationship together,
Mm-hmm.
come back and we always come back to the 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 idea that peer work is all about really learning from people that are also peers
Mm-hmm.
and having that experiential side get kind of harnessed and ironed out. Because a lot of times, I mean, I'm a person that has a story for every situation, as probably both of you know.
I like
and
that.
and yeah, and
Analogies.
it was like all because I want to, in every situation that I'm in, I want to have and I want to have at least enough of an understanding about that person to be able to have a conversation that honors like their perspective,
Uh-huh.
and to really try to get as far into their perspective as I can, so I feel it in my core.
Mm-hmm.
And it does require like some vulnerability, but it also, you have to know what that, like both sides of that coin feel like, you know what I
Mhm.
mean? So it's like, um,
It reminds me of,
it's a crucial part of the supervisory role,
Yeah.
especially in this work, I feel like.
for example, um, I I already knew that you were cool, because of the way your, I guess, is it demeanor or just the way you were.
Mhm.
Um, but I had to admit that
I'm gonna blush here.
I still had my reservations, I couldn't be all in and actually, because we have to be professionals.
Mhm.
But it was when he became vulnerable, in a supervision, that I actually was like, okay, so he is real down to earth, and he does understand, what it is to have childhood trauma and to not be trauma informed. And in a sense, he is trauma informed because he also had childhood trauma. So
Mhm.
he was vulnerable and he disclosed a moment of his childhood and trauma that he had. And that's when I'm like, okay, so he does get it. He does understand. And that's when our relationship, I guess I felt like I was safe enough to actually be
Mhm.
me. Because you were openly you.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that. And, it just makes me think about how we kind of force people to put on different hats. Like, you're wearing your professional hat now, so here's your box and you can talk about these things but not these things. And what I'm hearing as the two of you got to know each other more in your relationship, that you found the space and the importance of just being your true full selves and showing up and saying, like, yeah, I get that, and I've been there and I've walked in that space too, and that helped really create that sense of safety that allowed you both to flourish even more in your professional roles, like, right? So by being being yourselves, it allowed you to grow in a way that wouldn't if you just kind of stayed professional.
Yeah, I think from both of our perspectives, I think where we come from as people, I think we both hit our threshold for like trying to, I don't know what you call it, maybe it's like code switching or something.
Yeah.
It's like where I think we both simultaneously in our work hit the we hit the threshold of, we can't do this anymore. Like we can't come together and like turn off part of who we are and have a conversation that's going to help us to help others and help ourselves. Like we couldn't do that anymore. So we found ourselves like going into a lot of like, yo, come in my office and close the door. You know what I
Uh-huh.
mean? Like we need to
Yeah.
really talk. But when we really started to talk, when we really did that, it was like it created a space for both of us to heal
Mm-hmm.
and eventually go on to bigger and better things, because we both just kind of
Right.
knew that like
We outgrew the
we
pod.
got big dreams
Yeah.
and we're hitting like we're hitting the ceiling, we're bouncing against it, like just
Yeah.
and we both kind of came to that realization together, which was really cool. It was
Yeah.
like part of it was cool, part of it was tumultuous as all heck, but like
Uh-huh.
it had to happen.
Right.
And I think it's like led us to where we are today and having this conversation.
Yeah.
That's a pure word because when I met with,
Yeah,
with
it's like the real
participants,
work. Yeah.
it's like when you are vulnerable, or when you help support another peer, another person, you heal as well. A part of you heals as well. Like a piece comes together. Or you finally understand something.
Yeah. You can't spend 8 hours of your day not healing.
Right.
Like you can't. There's no way that you can do that, because when you're not able to be your authentic self, when you're feeling a little broken, you can't just say from 9 to 5, that's not
Right.
to be a factor. That's not going to come into play. You got to be able to to get mad. You got to be able to cry. You got to be able to like
Right.
have these experiences that are deep and profound,
Mhm.
and not feel like having those experiences are going to create a situation where you're like, um, unemployable, unable to work, not
Right.
doing your job, being unprofessional. I think both of us have like this, we want to change the game on that level.
Yeah,
Like, you know
yeah.
what I mean?
And I would say
Yeah.
it doesn't just apply to folks who are in a role of a peer, like, right? Like, we're all human and we come with our own selves. And I think that's really, the magic of trauma responsive spaces and places is that, things are going to happen, challenges will happen, whether it's personal or professional. And when we can allow people like not to close that off from 9 to 5 or whatever the hours are, like you said, there's growth that happens. And I think, Angela, you said it so well, like it allows for healing to happen. So, yeah. So I'm, curious as we kind of move to the, wrapping up our conversation. What would be like your recommendation? I'm especially around these peer services, like they're growing. It's great. Like and I think, what are the things that you really would want people to know to really maximize the benefits of having peers? Kind of within our system. I mean, they've always been there, but like really to grow and embrace and really capture all that can happen when we have the peer
I would say,
services. Yeah.
number one, get trauma informed. Like, get the trainings, do your research, do your, what is the word? I'm
Your
even
due
gonna
diligence?
do diligence.
See, we still
Your
do
due
this. We
diligence.
still.
Do the work, have intentionality behind it, like real intentionality, not just to say it to get it out there, or to ride a vibe or ride a wave, like for accountability, have that, being informed. And I would say number two is expanding these services, to schools. I have this big, like for years, we've been saying we need to get into schools, right? Like we need to do peer services in schools, and just spreading that awareness so we could actually train our youth to be more trauma informed, to be informed in ACEs, to have that vulnerability when it comes down to mental wellness, to break the stigma. So it's just having that empathy, being informed, trauma informed, and having that intentionality when it comes down to the work that you're doing. And then I guess maybe I already said it, but when, especially for youth, because I've always had that youth part, is that what Josh did with me, like give the youth an opportunity to mess up, to grow, and to learn, and to continue growing and learning, because we are not perfect, and we are, when it comes down to YPA, we're just entering the field. We're just starting off. Like we need that support, because we may be like, I don't understand what's really going on. I don't understand what this workshop mean. I don't understand what does panelists mean, or I don't understand what a service provider definition is. Just taking that time to have that empathy and that support for youth, without having that perspective in which they should be better, or they don't know what they're doing, or they don't belong here.
Yeah.
Because peers do belong in these services. Like we are here, we're part of the team, and we're here to stay.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I just think it's so important, and for youth and for everyone, that, it's okay to make a mistake. It's okay to ask questions. It's, I think a lot of people don't know, and they've been told directly or indirectly not to ask questions, and so just go along and just do the thing, but not understand it. So I just think it's so important. What you're really raising is like creating that space for curiosity. Like we want people to ask questions. So how about you, Josh? What would be your parting wisdom that you'd like to share? And with the mic drop, I'm just going back to
Right?
being a rapper.
Yeah, I feel like I was driving here to have this conversation, trying to think about like this question, and I really landed on listening to understand as a supervisor is huge. Listen to like understand, like truly understand, especially in the context of supervising professional peers. Really like trying your best to turn off the little interpretive voice that goes in your head when someone's talking. You know, a lot of us, I'm a person that is always waiting to be the next person to speak.
Mm-hmm.
I am not perfect. I have to work on it every single time I have a conversation to turn off the desire to be formulating what I want to say and then it comes at a cost of not hearing what a person has to say in a supervisory relationship, really listening to understand and being like, and speaking back what you're hearing
Mm-hmm.
and not coming into it from having too much of an agenda. There are times where we need to have difficult conversations that are just employment related, and that's just something, that's the reality of the working world that we live in. But I feel like in the context of this type of employment experience, this type of work, it's crucial to really listen and to be vulnerable. And if we all take the initiative to pull our authentic selves like into our job, it's almost like going on it's almost like a strike. It's almost like going on strike. We're all going to choose to be our true selves in the context of our work. If we all did that, we would start to see things change. We deserve to be our authentic selves at work. We deserve to grow. We all really require the space to heal in the context of our day, in the context of our work. And when we're doing that in the spotlight of providing services in a staff meeting, we're changing the game. We're changing the work. We're changing the perspectives that people have about what it truly means to be helping others. We have to like help ourselves to help others. We have to heal. We have to heal in the context of people watching us. I want people to see me heal because I know that if a person can tap into a tiny little piece of my journey and say, God, I've been there. I know what how did you make it out? How did you do that? Exactly. It's empowerment. And in all work, it should be something that we are just like a stand for. We got a line in the sand. We need to be ourselves. We need to grow. We need to learn. We need to come together and heal and hug and laugh and cry, all in the context of our day. We should not have to turn that off. And
yeah, we're humans, not robots.
Yeah.
that feels like a little mic droppy.
I was gonna say, I think it was. Boom, we did it.
Okay.
Yeah. So I want to thank you both for this conversation and for coming as your true authentic selves, for being vulnerable, for sharing your experience and your journey. And I am so glad to know both of you, and that I get to continue to be part of your journey in this work going forward. So thank you so much, and appreciate you both.
Thank you for joining us today. Please visit our website, traumainformedny.org, for additional trauma-responsive resources, events, and training opportunities. Subscribe to our podcast to be notified when our next episode is released.